In the vast and frozen forests of the Eurasian steppe, ancient Slavic tribes first began to form loose communities. Their lives were shaped by the rhythm of the seasons and the threat of raiders from the east. By the 9th century, these fragmented tribes were united by the Varangians, Norse warriors who sailed down the rivers and founded the state of Kievan Rus. At its center was Kiev, a trading hub that connected the Baltic with the Byzantine world. Orthodox Christianity was adopted in 988, forever shaping Russia's culture, art, and spiritual identity. The golden domes of new churches glittered over the Dnieper River as a new Russian soul was born. Princes built cities and palaces, but rivalries among them fractured unity. Kievan Rus splintered into competing states, each vying for dominance and protection. Then came the Mongols in the 13th century, sweeping across the steppe with terrifying force. The cities of Rus were burned, and survivors forced to pay tribute to the Golden Horde. For 2 centuries, Russian princes bowed to Mongol Khans. They collected taxes for their overlords and lived in fear of raids and punishment. Yet in the shadow of oppression, Moscow began to rise. Its leaders used cunning and loyalty to the Khans to gain influence over rival cities. By the late 1400s, Ivan III declared Moscow free from Mongol rule. He called himself Tsar and claimed divine right to rule all Russians. Ivan IV, known as Ivan the Terrible, expanded Russian lands with fire and steel. He crushed opposition with his secret police, the Oprichniki, and turned his wrath even on his own nobles. His rule ended in bloodshed and madness. Russia fell into the time of troubles, a chaotic period of famine, foreign invasion, and dynastic crisis. Polish troops occupied the Kremlin, and pretenders rose to claim the throne. The land groaned under war, starvation, and despair. In 1613, the Romanov dynasty was chosen to restore order. A boy named Mikhail Romanov was crowned Tsar, marking the birth of a new era. The Romanovs brought stability, but at a cost. Serfdom became law, tying millions of peasants to the land and to noble masters. Peter the Great changed everything in the late 1600s. Towering and relentless, he dragged Russia into the modern age. He built a navy from scratch, defeated Sweden, and seized access to the Baltic Sea. His new capital, St. Petersburg, stood as a window to the west. Nobles were forced to dress like Europeans and speak foreign languages, but Peter ruled with cruelty as well as vision, punishing dissent with violence. His reforms laid the foundation for a powerful empire, yet much of the population remained impoverished and voiceless. Catherine the Great continued Peter's work a century later. She embraced Enlightenment ideals while expanding Russia through war and diplomacy. She corresponded with philosophers and dreamed of reform, but when a peasant revolt threatened her throne, she cracked down with brutal force. The empire stretched from Poland to Alaska, a vast domain of ice, forests, and diverse peoples. Beneath its grandeur simmered unrest. In 1812, Napoleon invaded with the might of Europe behind him. The Russians retreated, torching cities and waiting for winter to strike. Moscow burned rather than fall. Napoleon's army starved and froze on the long march home. Tsar Alexander I emerged as a hero of Europe, but back home, demands for reform were met with silence. In 1825, the Decembrist officers tried to overthrow the autocracy. They were hanged or exiled, and the Tsarist grip tightened. Throughout the 19th century, Russia industrialized in fits and starts. factories rose, but most Russians remained peasants, bound to backbreaking labor. Alexander II freed the serfs in 1861, but gave them little land or support. Hopes for justice curdled into frustration. Terrorists assassinated Alexander II in 1881, and the empire slipped back into repression. The secret police grew stronger, and dissent was driven underground. Marxist ideas spread among students and workers. Underground printing presses distributed revolutionary leaflets by candlelight. By 1905, pressure exploded into revolution. Workers marched peacefully in St. Petersburg, but were gunned down in what became known as Bloody Sunday. Strikes, mutinies, and riots followed. Tsar Nicholas II made concessions, but refused to yield real power. World War I brought disaster. Millions died, food ran short, and soldiers deserted. In 1917, the monarchy collapsed. The Bolsheviks, led by Lenin, seized power with promises of peace, land, and bread. They pulled Russia out of the war, then plunged it into civil war. The Reds and Whites tore the country apart. Famine, executions, and chaos reigned. By 1922, the Bolsheviks had won, and the Soviet Union was born. Lenin dreamed of a workers' utopia, but his death brought Joseph Stalin to power, and with him, an age of terror. Stalin collectivized farms and crushed resistance with famine and exile. Millions died in forced labor camps or mass executions. Cities rose with smokestacks and concrete, symbols of industrial might, but they were built on the bones of the broken. The 1930s were ruled by fear. Neighbors vanished overnight, and confession meant survival. Ordinary citizens lived under constant suspicion. A careless word or wrong connection could mean imprisonment or death. Paranoia crept into every home. Children informed on parents, and trust became a dangerous luxury. Despite this darkness, Soviet culture flourished in unexpected places. Artists, filmmakers, and composers walked a razor's edge between brilliance and censorship. The Red Army expanded under Stalin's iron hand. Tanks rolled across borders as the world edged toward disaster. Stalin's 5-year plans demanded impossible output. Industrial cities mushroomed across the landscape, but workers lived in crowded barracks with little food. Science became a battlefield. Engineers and scientists were both praised and purged, their fates often tied to the success of secret projects. Millions of citizens memorized slogans and songs praising the state. Patriotism was mandatory, and fear was ever present. Education was reformed to glorify socialism. Children were taught to love the state more than their families. Religion was branded as superstition. Churches were razed or repurposed, and priests were imprisoned by the thousands. The NKVD executed poets and peasants alike. Loyalty was rewarded with survival, not safety. Those who survived did so with silence. To speak was to risk everything. Then came the storm of World War II. Hitler's armies invaded in 1941, reaching the gates of Moscow. The Soviets held the line at Stalingrad in a battle of unimaginable brutality. Slowly, they pushed the Germans back. From the ruins of war, the Soviet Union emerged a superpower, but the price was 27 million dead. Entire cities had to be rebuilt from rubble. Survivors lived with memories too painful to name. The Cold War began. The Iron Curtain fell across Europe, and the arms race began in earnest. Spies moved in shadows, bomb shelters were built. Fear became the air everyone breathed. In 1957, Sputnik launched into space. 4 years later, Yuri Gagarin became the first man to orbit the Earth. The Soviet Union soared in science but struggled at home. Shortages and censorship ruled daily life. Leaders came and went. Khrushchev thawed the terror, Brezhnev restored order, and stagnation set in. Under Brezhnev, life was predictable but suffocating. Factories churned, parades marched, and dissenters disappeared quietly. Television showed a world of achievement, but behind the scenes, corruption and decay crept in. In the 1980s, Mikhail Gorbachev introduced glasnost and perestroika. He sought to save the system by opening it up. Instead, it began to unravel. Republics demanded independence, and the economy collapsed. Protests grew from whispers to marches. The people saw a future beyond Soviet control. In 1991, the red flag was lowered over the Kremlin. The Soviet Union ceased to exist. The 1990s brought chaos, violence, and new wealth for the few. Oligarchs seized industries while pensions vanished. In 1999, Vladimir Putin rose to power. A former KGB agent, he promised strength and stability. He waged war in Chechnya, rebuilt the military, and took control of the media. Dissent was punished and loyalty rewarded. In 2014, Russia annexed Crimea. Sanctions followed, but Putin's popularity soared. The nation turned inward and back to tradition. Orthodoxy, nationalism, and history became central once more. Russia today faces a divided world. It is isolated by conflict but driven by ambition. Its past is a tapestry of triumph and tragedy. Its future, still unwritten, holds the weight of 1,000 years. From forest tribes to nuclear power, Russia's story is one of endurance. No matter the storm, it survives. Yet even now, beneath the strongman image, cracks widen. Demographic decline, brain drain, and economic pressures test the system. Voices of opposition speak through encrypted channels. Artists, writers, and youth resist in subtle ways. Russian culture remains rich, poetic, and haunted by history. From Tolstoy to Tchaikovsky, its spirit endures in creation. The Arctic melts while the army marches. Climate, geopolitics, and technology all collide at Russia's doorstep. New alliances form and old ones fray. China watches closely as Russia asserts its influence. Beyond the headlines, millions live ordinary lives shaped by extraordinary forces. Their stories, quiet or bold, carry the legacy of centuries. In a world more connected than ever, Russia remains distinct. Its soul forged by hardship, its pride untouched by time. The tale of Russia is not finished. It marches forward, unpredictable and unforgettable. Hit the like button if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to see more. Share to support the channel.